The click of the card catalog drawer sliding shut is one of the most satisfying sounds in the world. It's a sound of order, of finality, a story put back in its proper place. My life here in the Havenwood Library is full of these small, satisfying sounds. The soft thud of a book being placed on a shelf, the whisper of turning pages, the rhythmic thump of the date stamp. My world is flat, predictable, a page that's been written, proofread, and filed away. My only real escape is sorting through the archives and thinking about Julian. Yeah, still him. I tell myself this quiet is a choice, that I prefer the company of categorized histories over the messiness of actual people, that I find comfort in this structure. It's a lie, of course, a well-constructed one I've been telling myself for years. The truth is, I'm just waiting. For what? I don't know. For something, anything, to come along and rip the damn page out. My phone buzzes against the wooden countertop, rattling the half-empty cup of cold coffee next to it. It's Sarah. I already know what she's going to say. Elle, for God's sake, it's Friday. Her voice crackles through the speaker. There's a perfectly good bar stool at the Rusty Anchor with your name on it. Don't make me come drag you out of that tomb. I'm busy, I lie, looking around the completely empty library. Busy alphabetizing your spice rack again? You need to live a little, get out, meet someone who wasn't born in the 19th century. Haha, I'll think about it. That's a no. I can practically hear her roll her eyes. Fine, rot in your book castle. Just don't call me crying when you're 60 and your only companion is a cat named Dewey. I hang up, the silence of the library rushing back in. My fingers trace the rim of my coffee cup. In my head, I'm not here. I'm back at Blackwood Lake, 20 years ago. The air is thick with the smell of pine and damp earth. The moon is a perfect silver disk on the water. Julian's hand is in mine. It feels like a scene from an old movie, grainy and beautiful and sad. That's when I hear a sound that doesn't belong. The low purr of an engine, too smooth and quiet for any of the pickup trucks that usually crawl through Havenwood. I glance out the tall front window. A car. A black car. So black it seems to suck the sunlight out of the afternoon sky. It's long and low, and looks like it costs more than this entire library, including the land it's built on. It glides to a stop right at the curb. For a second, nobody moves. The whole street seems to be holding its breath. Then the driver's side door opens. A polished black shoe hits the pavement. Then a leg, clad in a perfectly tailored dark suit. And then the rest of him unfolds from the car. Holy shit! It's Julian Croft. He's older, of course, sharper. The softness of his teenage face has been carved into something more defined, more deliberate, but the eyes are the same. The way his dark hair falls over his forehead is the same. He straightens his tie, his gaze sweeping over the town square before landing squarely on the library window, on me. He walks toward the entrance, his steps measured and confident. The old bell above the library door jingles, a sound I haven't heard in years because the door always sticks, but for him it swings open without a sound. "Eleanor," he says. His voice is deeper now, smoother. He says my name like we just saw each other yesterday, not like 2 decades have passed between us. He claims he's back to invest in the town, to give back to his roots. He uses all the right words, says them with a politician's practiced ease. It all sounds so polished, so rehearsed. I nod along, my own voice feeling like a rusty hinge in my throat. He asks me to dinner, and because I'm an idiot, I say yes. We're at the only decent restaurant in town, the kind of place you go for anniversaries and funerals. Julian doesn't even look at the menu. "You'll have the Pinot Grigio," he says to the waitress, his eyes on me. "And she'll have the salmon, but with the sauce on the side. She doesn't like her food touching."
The waitress scribbles it down. I just stare at him. How does he remember that? It was a stupid quirk I had when I was 16. You remember that? I ask, trying to keep my voice light. I remember everything about you, Elle. He smiles. It's a perfect smile, white and even. But it's just a smile, a shape his mouth is making. There's nothing behind it.
Throughout the meal, it continues. He brings up a stupid joke I made in Mr. Henderson's history class. He asks if I still have that little silver locket my grandmother gave me. He hums a few bars of a song that was on the radio constantly the summer he left. It's not like he's reminiscing. It's like he's reading off a list of facts, data points he'd stored away and was now retrieving to prove what? That he cared? It feels less like affection and more like an audit. My hands are shaking a little, so I clasp them in my lap. I was just thinking about that night at the lake the other day, I say, deciding to test him. I add a little flourish, something that never happened. The way the fireflies all seemed to gather around us, it was magical. There's no flicker of recognition, no shared warmth, just that same pleasant, unreadable smile. High school memories, he says, taking a sip of his wine. He places the glass down with a precise, soft click. The town is looking at a new zoning proposal for the waterfront property. I think there's real potential there. He changed the subject, just like that. So fast, so clean, it was like a surgeon's cut. He didn't just avoid the topic, he erased it from the conversation. He drives me home in that silent, monstrous car. The leather seats smell like money. We don't talk. The air feels thick, hard to breathe. He walks me to my door, the porch light casting long shadows across his face. I got you something, he says, pulling a small velvet-wrapped box from his coat pocket. I didn't want you to feel lonely anymore. My fingers feel clumsy as I take it. It's heavy for its size. I pull off the ribbon and lift the lid. It's a music box, small, dark wood, intricately carved. I don't recognize the design. I wind the tiny key on the bottom. A melody begins to play, a simple, tinkling tune. My blood runs cold. It's the song, the one that was playing on the car radio that night, the one he was humming at dinner, the last song we ever heard together before he walked into the woods. How? How in the hell could he possibly remember that? It wasn't a hit, it wasn't a classic. It was just some random, forgotten song on a late-night radio station 20 years ago. It's not a memory. It can't be. It's something else. The small box feels like a block of ice in my hands. I look up at him, but he's already smiling that perfect, awful smile. My world, once so neatly categorized, was now a chaotic mess of flowers and construction dust. Julian was everywhere. A check arrived at the library, a donation so large it made the mayor choke on his coffee, with a simple note, for Eleanor's archives. Crews appeared on my street, repaving the cracked asphalt I'd complained about for years. They started, of course, right in front of my house. And the flowers, God, the flowers. A new bouquet every single day, delivered to the library, each one more elaborate than the last. Havenwood was buzzing. The lost boy returns a king, ready to reclaim his high school sweetheart. It was a fairy tale, they whispered, a real-life romance. He's marking his territory, Elle, Sarah said over the phone, her voice laced with the usual cynicism. Like a dog pissing on a fire hydrant. First the library, then your street, then you. You don't find that a little creepy? He's being thoughtful, I said, my voice weaker than I wanted it to be. I was trying to convince myself more than her. I wanted the fairy tale. I desperately wanted to believe in the beautiful, tragic boy from my memories, not this calculated stranger. But the odd little moments kept piling up, like stones in my pocket, weighing me down. We were in my kitchen. I'd insisted on making coffee, needing to do something normal, something that felt like my own life. My hand, clumsy and a little shaky, bumped my mug as I set it on the counter.
Hot coffee sloshed over the side, splashing onto the back of his hand. He didn't just flinch, he recoiled. He shot back so fast, his chair scraped violently against the linoleum floor. A raw, ugly sound in the quiet room. For one single horrifying second, the mask dropped. The look in his eyes wasn't annoyance or pain. It was something else, something cold and hard, like looking at a snake through glass. It was the look you'd give something you were about to crush under your heel. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. He said, his perfect smile snapping back into place.
He grabbed a napkin and dabbed at his hand with an unnerving calm. "It's nothing, Elle. Don't worry." But I saw it. I saw that flicker of something, and it scared the hell out of me. A few days later, he brought it up. We were sitting on my porch swing, the chain groaning rhythmically. "We should go back to the lake," he said, his voice smooth as polished stone. "Go back to where it all started." My heart did a stupid little flip, and then it sank. Half of me, the lonely, foolish part that had been waiting for 20 years, wanted to go. It wanted to recapture the magic of that night. But the other half, the part that saw that look in his eyes in my kitchen, wanted to run and never look back. The foolish part won. The drive out to Blackwood Lake was nothing like I remembered. Back then, it was in his beat-up Ford pickup, the radio crackling with static and cheap love songs. Now we were in his silent black car, gliding over the road like a hearse. There was no music. The silence in the car was heavy, thick. It felt like it was pressing in on me. The lake looked the same, the water dark and still, the tall pines ringing the shore like silent sentinels. But the feeling was all wrong. The magic was gone. There was no romance here, just a place, a location, an empty stage. Julian didn't even look at me. He walked straight to the water's edge and stood there, his back to me, staring at the dense, dark line of the woods on the other side. He just stood, perfectly still. His expensive suit looked wrong here, an ink blot on the natural landscape. He was like a statue dropped in the wrong museum. Minutes ticked by. The only sound was the faint lapping of water against the pebbles. The silence was starting to get loud. I had to break it. I tried to laugh, but the sound came out tight and strange. "I was just thinking," I said, my voice thin against the quiet. "Remember that night? You were trying so hard to be mysterious, and then you just slipped on the wet rocks right over there, fell right on your ass." I pointed to the spot, embellishing the memory, trying to paint a picture of two clumsy, stupid kids in love. He didn't move for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned. His face was a blank canvas. No smile, no nostalgia, nothing. "I don't remember falling," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. It was the voice of someone stating a fact from a textbook. He paused, his gaze still fixed on the woods. "I just remember the woods were very dark." The drive home was worse. I felt cold, a deep-in-the-bones kind of cold that had nothing to do with the night air. His words echoed in my head. "I don't remember falling. I just remember the woods were very dark." That night, sleep was a million miles away. I paced my small living room, the music box he'd given me sitting on the mantel like a tiny wooden tombstone. My memory, the one I had polished and perfected for 20 years, was starting to crack. Was I wrong? Did I make up the fall to make the night seem less strange? I needed proof, something real, something tangible from that time. I dragged a dusty box down from the attic, the word memories scrawled on the side in my teenage handwriting. I coughed on the dust as I pried open the lid. Inside was a jumble of concert ticket stubs, dried-out corsages, and stacks of photographs held together with brittle rubber bands. I sifted through them, my fingers leaving clean tracks in the dust. And then I found it. A picture of our group from that summer, taken at the lake a week before he left.
We were all there. Sarah, me, a few other kids from school, and Julian. A bunch of smiling, stupid kids squinting into the sun. I was leaning against him, my head on his shoulder. He had his arm around me, a wide, easy grin on his face. He looked happy. He looked normal. I stared at the photo, my heart thumping, and then I saw it. On the back of his hand, the one resting on my shoulder. Faint, silvery against his tan skin, but definitely there. A long, thin scratch. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I sat down hard on the floor, the photo trembling in my hand. So I hadn't imagined it. The scratch was real. My memory wasn't a lie, which meant his was. I sat there for hours, I think, just staring at the photograph until the smiling faces blurred into meaningless shapes. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I crawled into bed, leaving the box of memories open on the floor.
I must have fallen asleep because a sound jerked me awake. My eyes snapped open. The green numbers on my alarm clock read 2:13 a.m. The house was dead quiet. But I'd heard it. I know I did. A sharp, dry snap. It came from right outside my bedroom window. My blood turned to ice. My breath caught in my throat. It was the same sound. Jesus Christ, it was the same sound I'd heard coming from the woods all those years ago. The sound I'd told myself was just a branch breaking under an animal's weight. It was the same sound. My body refused to move. Every instinct screamed at me to stay under the covers, to pretend I was asleep, to pretend I heard nothing. But I couldn't. I had to know. My feet were numb as I slipped out of bed and crept to the window. My hand was shaking so badly it took me 2 tries to pull the edge of the curtain back. I peered through the narrow gap, down into my moonlit yard. There was nothing there. No one. Just the damp grass and the dark shape of the old oak tree. Wait. Something was on the lawn, lying pale against the dark grass. A single thick branch, stripped of its leaves, snapped cleanly in 2. It could have been the wind. It was just a branch. It had to be, right? I didn't sleep. Sleep wasn't a possibility. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I saw that branch, snapped, lying on my lawn like a bone. I heard the sound, that dry crack that echoed the one from 20 years ago. It played on a loop in my head. Crack, the sound of my carefully built world breaking apart. By sunrise, I was a wreck. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold a coffee mug. The photo sat on my kitchen table, a smiling ghost from a life I wasn't sure I had actually lived. The scratch on his hand was a tiny silver question mark. Everything Julian did now felt wrong. The flowers on my counter, once romantic, now looked like funeral arrangements. The new pavement outside my house felt less like a gift and more like a cage being built around me. His perfection, his calm, his money, it all felt like a costume, and I'd seen it slip. In my kitchen, over a splash of coffee, I'd seen the thing wearing the costume. I couldn't take it. The silence of my house was too loud. I needed noise. I needed people. I needed something normal, something real and solid and boring from the Havenwood I used to know before it became his stage. I needed to talk to Sheriff Miller. He wasn't sheriff anymore, of course. He was just old Mr. Miller now, a man who spent his days at the corner perk doing the crossword and complaining about his knees. He was a piece of the old town, a landmark. He was real in a way Julian wasn't. I wasn't going to talk about Julian. God, no. I was just going to talk about anything. The weather, the bad new sign the town council put up, anything to drown out the crack in my head. The bell on the door of the diner jingled, a sound as familiar as my own name. The place smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease. It was perfect. I saw him in his usual booth, a newspaper spread out in front of him. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," he said, his eyes crinkling when he saw me. He folded his paper neatly. "Pull up a seat, Eleanor. Heard you've become the town's leading lady." I forced a smile and slid into the worn vinyl seat across from him.
Just trying to keep the library from falling down, same as always. Don't be modest. The whole town's talking. Julian Croft back from the dead, paving your street, buying you flowers. It's like a storybook. My stomach tightened. Of course that's what we were going to talk about. I felt a wave of stupid, childish disappointment. There was no escaping him. It's been a lot, I said, picking at a loose thread on the seat. A waitress came over, and I ordered a black coffee I knew I wouldn't be able to drink. I needed something to do with my hands. He was always a quiet one, that Julian, Miller said, stirring his own coffee with a slow, rhythmic clink. Intense, even as a kid. Always felt like he was watching everything, figuring things out. I tried to laugh. The sound felt like it was coming from someone else. I was just an actor, playing the part of a woman who wasn't losing her mind. I had to take control of the story. I had to make it mine again. I had to make it small and harmless. A joke. Intense is one word for it, I said, my voice a little too bright.
I leaned forward, crafting the anecdote, trying to make it sound charming and silly. I was trying to convince myself more than him. God, we were so young. I still remember that goofy night at Blackwood Lake, right before he left. I paused, waiting for him to nod, to share the memory. He just kept stirring his coffee, his eyes on the swirling liquid. I pushed on, the words tumbling out. He was trying so hard to be all deep and mysterious, wandering off into the woods alone. Then he comes back an hour later, all silent and brooding. I let out another one of those fake laughs. And the best part? The whole time he was trying to be this big, moody hero, he'd actually just slipped on the wet rocks down by the shore, fell right on his ass and scraped up his hand something awful. I smiled, expecting him to chuckle, to say something about dumb kids. The stirring stopped. The tiny, metallic sound was suddenly gone, and the silence it left behind was huge. It filled the whole diner. Mr. Miller slowly, deliberately, placed his spoon down on the napkin next to his cup. The clink was sharp, final. He looked up at me. His face wasn't smiling. It wasn't nostalgic. There was just a deep, honest confusion in his eyes. The look you give someone who has just said the sky is green. "Slip and fall?" he asked. His voice was perfectly level, matter of fact. It held no accusation, no drama. It was just a voice stating a fact. "Eleanor, we pulled a body out of that lake the next morning." The world tilted. The cheerful chatter of the diner, the clatter of plates, the hiss of the espresso machine, it all faded into a low hum, like a single sustained note being held in the distance. He kept talking, his voice cutting through the fog in my head. A tourist, a hiker who was camping out there. He'd been stabbed. We questioned every kid who was at the lake that night. Standard procedure. We questioned you. We questioned Julian. He leaned forward just a fraction, his gaze steady. "Don't you remember that, Eleanor?" My breath left my body in a silent rush. The coffee cup in my hand started to tremble, a tiny earthquake that sent ripples across the black surface. It rattled against the saucer, a quiet, frantic little sound, the noise of everything falling apart. His words weren't an accusation. They were just information, a piece of data, old and filed away, that he had just pulled out and laid on the table between us. It sat there next to the sugar dispenser, cold and hard and undeniable. My mind wasn't racing. It had stopped, completely. It was a white, silent screen. I wasn't thinking about Julian holding a knife. I wasn't picturing a body in the water. That was too far, too much. The thought that broke through the static was smaller and 1,000 times worse. It wasn't a thought. It was a crack spreading through the foundation of my entire life, through 20 years of a memory I had held onto like a prayer.
If Julian didn't slip and fall, then where did the scratch on his hand come from? The wet clothes, the mud on his shoes, the awful dead silence of him when he came back from the trees. Where did it all come from?